Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm going to be reviewing 300,000 credits and a garage slot. At least for the 90% of the player base who are not tank collectors. For the 10% of the player base who are, I'm going to be reviewing the AMX 13 in brackets FL11. This is a tier 5 French premium light tank that is given to the whole of the community who completes, I think it's 8 of Wargaming's anniversary missions. And considering that these missions don't actually have to be done on the day that they're released, it's your opportunity if you play World of Tanks until the 21st of August and do some pretty darn easy missions to be able to get this tank completely for free. However, as with most things, when something is free, it doesn't usually mean that it has all that much value. Although, on the other hand, maybe this is a case of we don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Today I'm going to be letting you know all about the AMX 13 FL10 so you can decide as to whether it is better invested as 300,000 credits and a garage slot, or if it's actually worth playing. So the best tank to compare the AMX 13 FL10 to is the AMX ELC BIS. This is an infamous tier 5 tech tree tank, but I'm going to be comparing these two vehicles as if the ELC was using the 75mm gun, which gives it less alpha damage, much better damage per minute, and importantly a fully traversable turret. So immediately we notice that the damage per minute of the AMX 13 FL10 is abysmal. And there's really no other way to say this, but the AMX 13 FL10 has the worst damage per minute at tier 5 apart from the AMX ELC BIS. But that's if the ELC BIS is using the 90mm, which is by choice. This DPM is beyond horrendous, and it feels like it takes ages in this tank to accomplish anything with regards to taking out your opponents. The vehicle does have better penetration than 75mm, but 108 is still not great at tier 5. If you load the gold, you get 148, which is substantially better, but that kind of defeats the whole point of playing a low tier premium tank, and you are going to start to have to spend 2,800 credits to deal 110 damage to your opponents. The shell velocity on this vehicle standard rounds is mediocre, and it doesn't carry all that much ammunition, although, yeah, good luck even firing that amount of rounds. It would take you pretty much 10 minutes of continuous fire to be able to do so. The gun handling on this vehicle is very similar to the ELC BIS if it's using the 75mm, but it has worse turret reverse dispersion, slightly better accuracy, but incredibly limited elevation, only 10 degrees. So if you see these things on the battlefield, and there are a lot of them right now, then get above it and you can take advantage. So the speed limit on this vehicle, 65 forwards is great, 20 backwards is good. However, the problem is the power to weight ratio. It's just over 22, but the tank doesn't have good ground resistances. This means that it doesn't even get up to its top speed limit on medium, let alone on soft, where it feels incredibly sluggish. This relatively poor power to weight ratio compounds the issue of its mediocre track traverse, meaning that it kind of turns a bit more like a medium tank than a light tank, and the ELC is running rings around this vehicle. So maybe one of the saving graces of this vehicle is the armor. Well, yeah, not really. 50 at the front and 20 at the side means that this thing is going to get overmatched by all 61mm caliber guns, of which pretty much all vehicles have, and most HE shells are going through this vehicle reliably. It does have a little bit better protection against HE than the AMX ELC BIS, but I think the calling 40mm of armor would be stretching it. To add to this, the vehicle has 500 hit points, which is not enough to take hits from many tier 6 or tier 7 tanks, and I was getting two-shot very frequently in this vehicle when you're not inside the nice matchmaking. And when you're hitting your opponents for 110 with terrible damage per minute, with only 500 alpha, 500 hit points, I wish it had 500 alpha, yeah, this thing doesn't go a long way. Next up, let's talk about this tank's camo. It isn't bad at 17.67, but the 360 meters view range on this vehicle force you to use coated optics and vents, and most likely a premium consumable with a good crew if you want to make this thing work. But scouting is still very possible in this vehicle, as it does have the third best moving camo of any of the tier 5 tanks. So hopefully you're going to get on Malinovka and Prokhorovka, and you're not going to have to drive around very quickly. Crew-wise on this vehicle, it uses exactly the same loadout as the AMX 13-105, which kind of sucks if you're an EBR player, because you're never going to have a dedicated radio operator unless you want to sacrifice one of the crew skills on your commander. On this vehicle, I would prioritize camo, brothers in arms, situational awareness, and recon. Nothing else really matters, but considering how bad this thing performs on medium and soft terrain, off-road driving could also be a good focus. Equipment wise, you can only pick one setup at tier 5. I'm going to be using vents, exhaust, and coated optics. I'm not going to be taking a gun rammer, because this vehicle's damage per minute is so bad that it doesn't even really feel like it's worth improving it, and I would rather have a setup which allows me to have decent camera rating. I can get nearly 44% while moving, while having decent view range at 456. However, I would like to clarify that if you don't have a premium consumable and you don't have a very good commander with situational awareness and recon, you should probably use binoculars on this tank instead of coated optics. Anyway, that's quite enough jibber jabber. Let's take it out on the battlefield. So firstly, we're going to be loading into an okay matchup. We're right in the middle of the pack on Westfield, and I'm immediately thinking, okay, I'll go and get the first spot. I'll just drive right up and instant scout medal for me. However, then I realize I'm barely overtaking these heavy tanks or these medium tanks. Look at this, 40 kilometers an hour. And this is with off-road driving and a very skilled driver and a premium consumable. You can see that when the vehicle has to go up any kind of slope, it's very slow. And the M5A1 Stuart just completely outscouts me up into the position and spots like pretty much like 11 tanks on the enemy team, doing what you'd hope a light tank would be able to do at the start of the battle. However, when this thing does get to go down slope, it's pretty good. So I thought to myself, I'm using my EBR driver. I have controlled impact. Let's go for a ram. Yeah, probably not a good idea to even ram tiny little light tanks on the enemy team. This is a tier 4 light tank and ended up losing the ramming trade. And look at this thing's reload, boys and girls. It is, wow. This is 110 damage for this kind of a length of reload. It is pretty painful. That's 500 damage. Not bad, but including the ramming damage that we dealt, which was 74. I really, when you play this thing, you have to play it to realize just how bad the damage per minute is. Now, I guess you could put a gun rammer on this vehicle, but if you put a gun rammer on and you don't use vents, you're literally saying that you want to improve just the worst aspect of the tank by 7%. To not get everything else to be better by 3%, like the view range, the traverse speed, the ground resistances, maybe even your intuition time so you can switch between your shells if you've got softly armored targets. I do recommend that you take a few HE shells on this tank. I actually put the HE shells to good work against artillery, and increasing your alpha damage to 175, while it's not going to work against every single target, it's probably one of your only chances to change this tank from having the worst damage per minute to something that's a bit more reasonable for a light tank. And this is really where you want to get this vehicle. On the fringes, use that exhaust to be able to get into a snipey position. And then from here, the gun's not that bad. The accuracy isn't exactly wonderful at 0.39, but you know what, with vents, it's not the worst thing that you're ever going to use. And if you spam gold into the side of a tier 6 heavy like you see me doing now, yeah, you can pick them apart, at least not quickly. It's ridiculous that you almost kind of go into a bit of like a time dilation when you're playing this vehicle, no doubt. You can sit there and you're thinking that you must have high alpha damage or something, right? With a 5-second reload, I'm thinking, oh, I've probably got about like 180 alpha or something, because that's pretty normal for tier 5 if you are reloading for this long to be hitting that hard. It's just simply not the case. And today I was actually the French medium tank tech tree showcase for the Bat Chatillon, and I played through a lot of the mid-tier and the lower-tier French light tanks, including the ELC with the 75mm. And that vehicle just felt so much better with regards to the camo rating, so much better with regards to just the damage per minute. I felt like I was so much more involved with the battle. And it just creeps me out in a way that this thing also has an engine at the front that just gets damaged all the time. Absolutely all the time, boys and girls. I lost engine after engine after engine, sometimes red engines, sometimes just a yellow engine. But considering that you have to kind of like pull back and be able to avoid then getting ripped apart by a tank that actually has something called damage per minute, it does feel very frustrating like that. So would I recommend to use a large repair kit on this vehicle? Maybe if you're tryharding and trying to 3-mark, but that kind of defeats the whole point of at least most players playing a tier 5 premium tank. And this pesky T67 who did put a gold round into us earlier, where are they? That's what I like to say, right in the middle of 3 different tanks. Doesn't look like it's good news for him. But this situation for this tank was about as good as it gets for the AMX 13 FL11. So our game on Westfield was a first class medal for 915 base experience. We managed to get 1,900 combined, and we made 10,000 credits profit after resupplying all of that gold and a premium consumable at full price, showing you that this tank does make premium credits, but it doesn't outweigh the cost of spamming gold with this tank's terrible alpha damage. So now we're going to be playing on Berlin in, again, a mid-tier matchup where there are some tier 6s, some tier 5s, and some tier 4s. Man, I like these kind of spreads of games, and I really don't mind being in the middle of the pack. Although, with this vehicle, it doesn't really matter too much what kind of a matchup you're in. You've got bad damage per minute against tier 4s, I guess just horrendous damage per minute against tier 7s. And really, when you play against a tier 7 tank, they'll have insurmountable amounts of hit points. Think about this thing versus a T-29, for example. The T-29 can two-shot you with a 90mm gun in literally like 5 seconds. It's going to take you about a minute or over a minute to be able to whittle down a T-29 if he's not using the durability device. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that a tier 5 tank should be able to clip out a tier 7 that quickly. But it kind of just becomes a little bit of a joke with trading in this tank. And you will have to have a good knowledge of your opponent's awareness or know exactly where you can be able to sneak in those shots, because you have to try and make it work. Luckily, there were quite a few AMX 13 FL11s inside the matchmaker. I'm going to lock down that guy's tracks, and what that will allow me to do is to hopefully side scrape out and get him, but I don't need to because my artillery finishes the job. So this T-28 pokes forwards. They managed to do 75 to me, and I low roll, to be fair. I could have killed that guy before he managed to actually hit me, but unfortunately I rolled for 96 rather than 110. So that kind of ruins it for me. Okay, I know you've got the world's longest reload, so I might as well just try and link in a shell. And, look, does anyone think that I should be on more than 400 damage now? Yeah. Yeah, I really probably should be. It's kind of like a joke when you think about this tank versus something like an even 90, not the even 90, sorry, the AMX ELC, both with a 90mm and also with the 75. I just decided in this game that I might as well try and make a bit of a sweeping push play. And quite often what you can do is you can sneak along here. And while it's not exactly the most subtle thing that I've ever done in my life, it's more of a bit sus, as the kids would say, a bit suspect what we're doing here. But I just felt like I got to try and go after the artillery. I got to try and do something, and I can't push into the light tanks, and I can't push into the tank destroyers down towards the middle or south of this map. However, I could end up doing pretty good against the artillery here. Now, I'm actually going to use an intuition switch out here for the HE because I didn't want to take the 50-50 roll. And you can see that if you do aim pretty okay with those HE shells, you're going to be able to do some work. Now, I just realized, in retrospect, but I also think I realized at the time, there's a bit of a mistake here by me. And that is that you can see that the artillery on the enemy team actually took a swing at the Hetzer. You can see the artillery shells splashed near the Hetzer. And I should have realized, considering I didn't see the tracer, that there wasn't an artillery in this position. And so I end up wasting my time going and checking out the corner to try and find a griller. I had a moment thinking, should I go up on the bridge and see if I can get the high ground to be able to shoot him? But in retrospect, that would have been an awful idea because I wouldn't have been able to catch the griller. And all I would have done is now been sitting up on a bridge and not actually playing the game. I'd like to highlight once again the speed of this vehicle going up the slope, down to like 38 going up that slope. This is not a fast tank. There are medium tanks at tier 5 that are faster than this vehicle. It's not incredibly slow, don't get me wrong, but it just feels all in all disappointing that it hardly ever gets up to that top speed limit of 65 kilometers an hour. Alright, so we've got our HE shell loaded once again. Hopefully this is going to allow us to just get the griller closer and we won't turn it into a 50-50 thing. I rammed the griller there, hoping that I could be able to finish them off, but I was actually unable to do so. Luckily, the griller panic fires, I guess, or maybe he was trying to shoot at the sow, and I can lock down the tracks of the Stug 3, get a nice amount of assistance there, 287, and then turn my attention to the remaining vehicles. So I played this thing about 10 times today on stream, and I don't think I had a single fun game, honestly. It's not a fun tank, it's not a funny tank. When I'm playing the ELC, it's so low profile that you can kind of drive up underneath your opponent's guns and they literally can't be able to depress the gun against you. It's hilarious to do that. It's one of the most fun things you can do in World of Tanks, I'd say. This vehicle's so tall that you can't do that. I mean, I guess it's good in this kind of a situation where you want to be able to shoot up over a ridgeline, if you can manage to with the vehicle's poor 5 degrees of gun depression. But all in all, this was probably one of the least fun tanks that I think I could ever play. Now, look, don't get me wrong. It's a nice free gift from Wargaming, alright? It's a tier 5 premium, it makes good credits, and I should load an HE shell here to finish off the T67, but no, he shuts me down. So I think this is the case of kind of like, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. It's a nice, fun gift, not fun, it's a nice gift from Wargaming that you have to kind of like, you open it up, you go, gee, thanks, that's very generous of you. And then I guess you're kind of like hoping probably that there's some kind of a receipt nearby, because yeah, I think you should be returning this one to Wargaming and keeping the garage slot and the 300,000 credits. I had no fun in any of the 10 games that I played in this vehicle, and there are far better and more fun premium tanks that you can be playing at tier 5 that you can pick up for free just for watching Twitch streams like mine, for example. Tier 5 is also such a nothing tier to play in World of Tanks. You don't get battle pass points, and you can't do any of Wargaming's mission marathons, for example. Luckily, this result gave us our ace tanker in the AMX 13 FL11, which I was very happy about, even though it was only 1,043 base, which you'd expect would be substantially higher if a lot of people have been taking these out onto the battlefield. That really shows you that nobody's been having great games in this tank, as 4 kills and 1,900 was enough to be able to get the ace. And 50,000 credits results in a 27,000 credit profit. Obviously, I'm going to be buying some consumables at half price this Wednesday, but it really shows you that these were 2 of the best games that I had in the vehicle over a 10-game session, and to not be making that many credits is not particularly wonderful. So all in all, the AMX 13 FL11. Would I recommend grinding your heart out in World of Tanks to get this vehicle? No, I thoroughly wouldn't. But you don't have to. All you have to do is play World of Tanks casually for about an hour or so on one of the latter days, and you can get this thing completely for free. From there, it's going to be down to you whether you think that you're a tank collector and you really just want to have it sitting in your garage gathering dust, maybe another opportunity to get an ace tank or another 3 mark of excellence, or the more sensible thing, which is definitely to turn this thing into 300,000 credits in a garage slot. But at least it was fun to do a review today on something I'm at least considering is a bit of a non-tank. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it's released on Monday, I'm going to be going live all day on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby, giving away new Twitch drop tokens so you can actually get good tier 5 premium tanks like the T14 Heavy. So really looking forward to seeing you all live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.